Hey everybody, welcome to this week's Roundup. We're about a week and a half away from Retro World Expo, and I'm getting really excited to come hang out and meet as many of you as possible and just to have a great time. There's going to be so many good panels and awesome people there, and I'll talk a little bit more about it next week too, just to hype everybody up. Also, I'm going to be selling a couple of things, and I think now is probably a good time to mention it because many of you might be driving up to the area. So just keep an eye out for a video or a post or something, at the very least, before next week's roundup, in order to know what I'm selling and if it's anything that you might want to pick up, which, not everybody's obviously interested in this stuff, but I figured if you're in the area, let me just start selling some stuff now because you might be driving right by anyway. But whatever, let's jump in and see what's been going on in the past week. First up is a fun one for fans of the Game Boy Advance eReader. Matt from Retro Cards has just launched Series 1 of brand new physical game cards for the GBA eReader that were all coded for the GBA and then converted over to the eReader format. They're available in multiple regions for about $15 and come with a couple of different games that are all like Snake, Solitaire, Bomb Hunter. Basically, this is just something that's supposed to be a fun but cool game set to buy for people that want to use their unique and weird hardware and also just want to have some physical media to play around with it. So links to everything that you need to know are right in Selena's post, and it just seems like a fun one where if you already have all that hardware, why not pick up some fun new games to play with it? Next up, Terrasec have just announced the successor to the DE10 Nano, which is the heart of the Mr. FPGA project that they're calling the DE25. And this is both really exciting, but I want you to all keep your expectations in check, at least at the beginning. This isn't some immediate plug and play thing that you could all buy and swap your SD card over and immediately get 4K 240 or whatever on there. But there are some really cool enhancements about this that could allow for a lot of good things. First of all, it's going to require different software, so Sorg is going to have to port the Mr. Main over to it, which is obviously a ton of work, but this is the same type of subsidized hardware dev kit as the DE10, so I guess it makes sense to focus on this one than another piece of hardware, especially because these dev kits are supported for multiple years, usually more so than just a generic piece of hardware might be supported for, so it should be something that would be officially supported on the Mr., at least the Mr. Main. I think other devs might have to port their stuff over afterwards as well. And this is going to allow for a bunch of different things. And right off the bat, dual RAM will most likely not be necessary due to the 128 megabytes of built-in SD RAM and dedicated shared DDR4. It also has 30% more block RAM and is capable of higher clock speeds. So right through the gates, that should mean cores like the Saturn, Jaguar, and N64 would benefit from the faster chip in RAM. And the 486 core also has the potential to see a big difference because you could use higher CPU clock speeds, as well as have MIDI emulators that are able to run properly on the more powerful HPS ARM cores. But on the flip side, older cores like NES will run exactly the same because they're not using the full processing power of the DE10. But there's a lot more potential for this. And it's going to be something that really remains to be seen because the devs would have to work it all out from scratch. And I'm going to throw out some ideas here, but this is speculating. This is like barstool coding right here, and all of it might be complete BS, but at least it's potential to have things like the faster coprocessor that's in here might be able to run things like Kodi or MAME or stuff like that. Now, you could technically run it on the DE10, but it'd be about as fast as a Raspberry Pi 1. So the fact that it would load isn't surprising. The fact that it would load and actually be usable. So while right off the bat, it's probably not going to be something like a Raspberry Pi and a Mister combined into one, it's got the potential to access stuff like that, which I think is pretty exciting because I would love to have one piece of hardware that could run multiple things. And if there is potential for hybrid emulation here, which, the DE10 absolutely does. You could do stuff like the Raspberry Pi MIDI module that could plug right in. I mean, there's kind of potential for that here as well. As far as higher resolutions, the specs of the DE25 state 1080p, but that's official HDMI specs. You could do stuff like run it in DVI mode and try to force higher resolutions like the devs already do with 1440p in the DE10, but how high it could go and how reliable it would be and if it would work for every core also remains to be seen. So that's why I'm trying to just keep like realistic expectations and try to curve everybody's mental image of what this could turn out to be. I don't think it's fair at all to expect a gazillion features the moment this thing hits the market. I think it's way more fair to start out the way I did in the post and just say, on day one, assuming that everything is ported over, you could get support for, the current stuff, but some of it might run a little bit better. Now, when I see stuff like this, because I'm a nerd, but also because I've been in product design for 20 years now almost, I see two things. I see exactly what I see with the DE10, a dev kit that's going to be available worldwide that everybody could be working on the same piece of hardware. And I also see something that's designed for learning, not designed for gaming and everything else that we might be using this for. So what I would also love to see is something like this that has retro gamers in the Mr. project in mind. So something like the Mr. Multi-System 2, but maybe using this setup because you could have access to all of the pins of the FPGA. Maybe there are higher or more powerful ones or ones with more logic elements in them that could be used. Maybe there's ways to do it where, I've been told that you can't get HDMI chips that will run in 4K and, 4K 60 and higher that will be licensed to work with open source projects. But there's also other ways around that. So, when I see this, I see nothing but positivity, but I also see a potential for a hardware open source Mr. platform that we could all be working on. So I do hope people that do this stuff, the Mr. Multi-Systems, the Takis of the world might consider talking about this and thinking, is this where we want to put all of our efforts? Or is there another piece of hardware that we could make for similar pricing-ish that could do more for us in the Mr. project and the things we do for it? Now, there's also no pricing on the DE25 yet, at least none that I found. If I missed it, please let me know in the comments and I'll apologize next week for the mistake. But it could be a scenario where this is like $200-300 and doing it manually would be $700 or $800, just like when the DE10 was first launched. That was absolutely the case. You could not get that FPGA in small quantities, small meaning like under 10,000 without spending more than the DE10 on just the chip. So who knows? Maybe the DE25 really would be the perfect route of the Mr. 2, or maybe we all need to kind of work together to get an open source set of hardware we could all work on and develop for and have our own add-on modules and stuff like that. I don't know, but it's my job to take the technical facts and then speculate on it and put the ideas out there for the smarter people. But at the very least, it's cool to see the next generation of this stuff. And I definitely know what I would like to see on more powerful Mr. hardware. But, who knows? Let me know in the comments. What would you like to see? What are you excited for? Maybe it's realistic, maybe it's not, but it's fun for discussion. A vinyl version of the Virtua Fighter 3 TB soundtrack is now available to pre-order. The price is about $36 and it's scheduled to release to customers before the end of the year, planning for November. And the music has been remastered for this release and comes with new linear notes from one of the composers in both English and Japanese. It's a 2 LP set with 30 tracks, and it's available in either translucent orange and white from all distributors, and also an iridescent vinyl Dural edition is exclusive to Cartridge Thunder. So if you like Virtua Fighter 3 TB and you want a fun vinyl version of the soundtrack, absolutely check out Crystal's post. I just posted a video about Philips Hue TV bias lighting, and this was actually a follow-up to the video I did on the LG C4 OLED, where I had that whole section at the end about how I liked this lighting and how it worked with all of the different setups we work on and how it works with the Retro and BFI and all of that. And this was just kind of like my thoughts on it 6 months later after using it in 3 different configurations, and really just sharing how I think it could benefit your setup or not. And TV bias lighting is something that's definitely proven to be helpful in certain situations, but I'll admit, and I've said this a bunch of times before, when I first saw it, I thought it was total BS and a complete gimmick. I didn't take it seriously at all. And then I started reading some of the professional applications of bias lighting, and the basic theory is if you have a giant 77-inch OLED shining a flashlight of light directly into your eyes in a dark room, bias lighting could be helpful for people who get eye strain from that kind of stuff or don't have the proper ambient lighting in the room or whatever. So from that perspective, it's definitely not a gimmick, but I thought, do I really need all the colors on screen? Does it really matter? And I think it definitely does in the right scenario. And my favorite comparison in this, I also re-released as just a social media post and YouTube short, and it shows a scene with the lighting on and off. And it's kind of important because, as I explained in the video, I couldn't get it to look with my camera the same way I do in person. If I have my camera face on to the TV screen, the TV's backlight washes out all of the Philips Hue lighting. And then if I start to raise the Hue lighting to compensate, it kind of changes the look of things. Whereas if I take the camera and put it at just an angle, the Hue lighting looks super bright and overpowering even on its lowest setting, like I showed in the thumbnail here. And the thumbnail worked out to have it like that, just so it stands out, but in the video it didn't. It really just looked like the Hue lighting was dumb and overpowering. But even looking dim head on, if you watch the clip that I showed and you're focusing on the one with the lighting and you go down to the one without, you start to really feel like something's missing. Just like I did when I started watching half a movie with it on and half a movie with it off, I really did think it added to the experience. The only other thoughts that I forgot to talk about in the video are, or at least elaborate on in the video, are yes, it's annoying to have to pay $3 a month for a subscription for something that you bought, but it's really important to keep in mind that whether you agree with that price model or not, if you pay $3 a month to use the app built into the TV, it would take over a decade to reach the same amount of money that you would have spent on the HDMI box, and you could cancel it at any time. So while I do agree that purchasing a subscription for a piece of hardware you already own is ridiculous, you don't own the HDMI box hardware. You're buying the app instead of it. So this is one of the rare occasions where I'll say, okay, I'll deal with it, especially because it's $3 a month. That's totally fine. And the only other thing I forgot to mention is I would love for there to be a way to turn up the brightness on the bulbs that I have in my room, because while it does seem to work out great, I do like the Hue's backlight for the TV on its lowest setting because I want it to just barely add to the experience. I want it to make it feel like you're in a movie theater with your projector's light kind of illuminating the room. So I don't want to feel like there's a colored flashlight behind my TV. However, the backlights in the room I think would benefit from being a tiny bit brighter for the brighter scenes. So is there a way to do that? Because in the Hue app, you could absolutely configure it so that if you use the phone app to turn everything on, you could adjust it that way. But I refuse to use the app for anything other than configuration. I just use the wall switch anyway. But from the actual syncing to the TV, I was kind of curious if there's a way to do that as well. Might work out, might not, I don't know, but it's something that I would like to mess with. But honestly, just give this video a watch if you're curious about it. It's not a gimmick. You could still walk away from this going, I don't think I'd like it. And that's totally fine. That opinion I will stand by. And I even showed in the video one very specific scenario where I didn't like it at all. Actually, it just was useless. It's not that I didn't like it. It just, you didn't even notice it. It was totally pointless and would have been a waste of money if that was the main use case for it. But it's definitely funny to see how many people who won't even watch the video because they just think it's a stupid gimmick and they think it's not real, or I don't know. It's one of those things where I get it. I kind of shared some of the similar thoughts, but give the video a try. See what you think. Scarlet Sprites recently posted a video about Darksoft's CPS-1 multi, as well as other accessories for the Capcom Play System 1, and while I've talked about all of that stuff here before, I wanted to showcase the video because it's a pretty cool overview for people that are interested in using original arcade hardware, and specifically the CPS-1. Now, as always, I have to politely remind people that this is for people who want to use original hardware. If you want to play CPS-1 games, go download a software emulator and try them out for free, or get the MiSTer versions for really excellent, accurate ways to play it. This video, and every time I talk about it, is for people who have decided they want the original experience. Exactly like people who want to buy classic cars. You know, I hear a lot of opinions of like, that's dumb, why don't you just go lease a new car for, pennies on the dollar? That's not why people buy classic cars. That's not why people use original arcade hardware. So if you're somebody that wants to do that, you get to check out the multi, the case to it, and also just kind of see how it works. And I personally have had both. I have and enjoyed original arcade hardware, and for the games that are special to me, I think it's important to me to own some of that stuff, or at the very least to have experienced it. But for a lot of the other stuff, especially the casual games that I play, the MiSTer versions are more than I will ever need. So it's really just up to you. But either way, check out the video for a cool glimpse into it and see how all this stuff works. Now it's time for this week's Mr. Updates, care of Lou from Lou's Retro Source. As usual, I'm just going to skim through these and give my thoughts where I feel like it, but if you want all the details and visual examples, please check out Lou's video. First up, Hotego just wanted to remind everybody that work on the Run and Gun and CPS3 hardware continues, but there's still a few hurdles to get over, and Lou and Hotego goes over that if you're interested. Also, the Mr. Organized project now supports detecting the full set of PlayStation, USA, Euro, and Japanese games, and even exclusives from other regions can be detected as well. There's also a few other ways to sort and a few other things to be added to it. I still really would love to see that integrated into RetroNAS, by the way. Next, the Mr. Multisystem 2 team have published all of the 3D model files for the Multisystem 2 on printables, and they're licensed under the CC BY SA license. So basically, if you want to make your own, all you need is attribution. So basically, just let them know where it came from. Over on the Mr. FPGA forums, a user was posting about a database they're maintaining that's about testing cheap display devices from AliExpress, and the goal is to figure out how to make them perform as good as possible for each display, specifically with use on the Mr., which I think is an excellent idea, because while everybody would love to go out and buy the best, fastest monitor possible, people on a budget really should know what are the best to choose from. And you can get decent displays at very cheap prices, but it's very common that you could pick up two cheap displays that are exactly the same price, and one performs very well and the other is complete garbage. So I love stuff like this. So thanks for working on that database. Next up, Taki's Superstation 1 had added a bypass switch to the dock that lets you choose between the built-in PlayStation game controller ports and a standard snack port. So I guess it kind of makes sense on how that workflow is going to go through. Without the dock, you won't be able to use a separate snack port, I think. But the way that console is designed, that makes perfect sense, and it just seems cool that this is now an option that's going to be added to it. And I believe they're still planning on shipping to customers by the end of the year, which is cutting it close, but we'll see. Bedroom Ninja released the 3D print files for a case that fits with RetroRemake's NFC reader. So if you have a 3D printer, you could just print out a case yourself for that. Hotego has released a beta core for the arcade game Surprise Attack, which is a side-scrolling adventure game. Patreon subscribers are also beta testers, but once that's out of beta, that'll be available for everybody to download. Also, speaking of which, the JT Ajax core, which is compatible with Konami's Ajax arcade game, is now promoted to a public core. So all you need to do is just run update all and you'll be able to get that. The TurboGrafx CD core has been updated with CD plus G support, as well as some CPU and VDC fixes. Anybody remember getting the CD plus G game with their Sega CD, or not game, the disc? And I don't know about you, but I think I played it once and was like, okay, I'm going to go back into gaming. But it's still awesome to have that in Mr. because you want to be able to archive all of the history of this stuff. And I bet you there's some CD plus G stuff that's fun. I believe karaoke is probably the best use for it, but the stuff that came with the Sega CD was kind of underwhelming at the time. And I think I only liked one or two of the songs on there anyway. But moving on, the Commodore 64 core has been updated with support for Easy Flash carts, as well as support for Waterloo Structured Basic and BMP Data Turbo 2000. And the Mr. Main has been updated with a bunch of different stuff, including support for Chroma over subcarrier via VGA, which was something we discussed a while back, but I think it was decided that they weren't going to do it. So I'd love to know more information on that, but I guess I'll follow up with that at some point in the future. But anyway, if you rely on Lou's work as much as I do, please consider supporting on Patreon. And if not, at the very least, give him a subscribe over on YouTube, because I appreciate all of this stuff, and there's no way I could keep up with all this Mr. News without him. The Sega Saturn run and gun game Shinrei Jusatsushi Torimaru has just gotten an English translation patch, and include things like the opening and ending credits, the options menu, the title screen, the in-game UI, and the opening and ending narration was dubbed in English. So this seems like a pretty fun game that might be worth playing, and stuff like this, I'm sure you could fumble through the original without the translation, but it's great to actually have it, and I always appreciate these translations, and this seems like a game I'd actually be interested in playing. Apparently, the copies of the game are notoriously expensive, but you know, for stuff like this, try before you buy is definitely worth it. And now you could have an English translation of it available. So see if you could find a way to procure the game and then give this thing a shot. But as always, thank you to everybody who works on any part of these English translations or translations to any language, because it's always awesome to be able to have a new retro game that you experience for the first time that you just would have never been able to without it. The developer Infidelity has just reported Mike Tyson's Punch-Out from NES to SNES. And reported meaning none of the original conversion was used. This was a ground-up reconversion of it. And part of it was because the main reason the original was ported was kind of like a technical achievement of porting the MMC2 mapper over to the SNES, but this time the focus was the game itself, and everything is as you would expect. The UI is in the correct place, all of the animations are there, but it also has Randy Linden's code for Rumble, which is absolutely awesome, and a few different MSU1 audio soundtracks, including one of the Firebrand X perfect analog rips, perfect in quotes because it's impossible to get anything perfect from analog, but that in itself is really important because now you get an extremely high quality version of how the game could have sounded with all of the best analog hardware on the original NES, except when the soundtrack plays, often bits of the soundtrack stop playing so that the NES's sound chips could then do some of the effects that need to be done inside the game. And with this now, the soundtrack plays all the way through and you still get the effects and you don't have to choose, well, the cartridge doesn't have to choose between one or the other, or the system or whatever. So it's one of those things that I think that might be my preferred way to use a lot of these NES to SNES conversions is with the FBX original soundtrack rips, so you could get exactly that. Clean analog sounding audio, but also all of the effects of the game without any of the dropouts. So this is absolutely awesome if you're a fan of the game, because you also get all of the enhancements of these conversions. You get the faster CPU speed, which means less dropouts, or less slowdown, less sprite flicker, less stuff like that. So overall, if you're a fan, you absolutely have to try this out. If you really want details of what you get out of these conversions, I talked about it a lot in a bunch of the previous ones. I left a link to one of the times that I kind of just went deep as to why these are important, but either way, just download it and try it if you have the ability to play SNES ROMs. And if you don't have the ability to play MSU1, you can still play them. It just uses Membler's sound emulator. And also, don't forget that while all of these are free to download, the developer Infidelity spends a lot of time on these, so consider supporting. And if you're going to be at Retro World Expo, definitely check out the developers panel that they're doing on how these things work. And I believe Rumblemints might be a part of that as well. Another awesome dev that does these. So I'm looking forward to hanging out with both of them. I've hung out with Rumblemints last year, but this will be the first time I'll be meeting the developer Infidelity in person. So looking forward to that as well. And just excited to get to Retro World. And I believe some of these will be on display on the booth as well. So come check them out. Well, that's it for this week. As always, thanks to everybody who watches, listens, plays nicely in the comments, and especially thank you to anybody who supports in absolutely any way, because it really is you who's keeping all of this stuff going. So thank you all so much, and I'll see you next week. This week's Roundup is brought to you by Neo Paradigm Entertainment, connecting Southeast Asian influencers with opportunities in the West.